Here we are at Fountain Square Baptist Church, and we are doing our Baptist history tour here of 2015, going backwards in history, following all of those involved to get us where we are today, or at least as many of those involved as we can follow today, considering the blizzard going on and all of that. So, where we are here. We started here in 2011. Actually, we came from McGregor Road Baptist Church, and they ordained me. I could give you the long version, but I'm just going to go with the short version. I got saved in 1998 there at McGregor Road. I surrendered to preach. Actually, just 2 months later, I got saved in September, surrendered to preach in November. I assisted Pastor Kaiser after he became the pastor. Pastor Terry Danford was the pastor at the time. He was the one that baptized me. And then Brother Kaiser was kind of like my father in the faith for all of that time. In March of 2011, after November of 2010, I had surrendered to doing inner city work. God was really working on my heart on it, and I was kind of fighting it for a long time. Finally, I said, okay, I'll go. I'll do that if that's what you want me to do. And so I stood up during a missions conference. Afterwards, they asked for some testimonies and so forth. So I stood up and I said, I believe God wants me to be. I believe God wants us to do something downtown, and I believe He wants me to be a part of it. It was interesting. I was struggling with it for a while, and I prayed right before that message. I said, God, if you want me to do that, then make it clear right now. Make it clear in this message tonight. And Brother Ted Alexander was preaching. He got up to preach. He opened his Bible to Acts chapter 1, verse number 8, and then he spent the entire message preaching about reaching our Judea and the importance of inner city church planting. And so, perfectly, it was the answer that I needed right then for coming here. So I said, okay, I know that's what God wants me to do. So in March of 2011, March 13th of 2011, the church there, McGregor Road Baptist Church, unanimously ordained me, commissioned me, and sent me out to Fountain Square. And in fact, a lot of the men of the church came outside of their services. And on the 17th, actually, of March, which was the following Thursday, we came out here, right out here on the corner, and we started preaching right out here on the corner. That's when we met Travis. Travis was already saved. He was coming through, and Brother Rob Horton was on one corner preaching. I was over on another corner preaching. My wife was over near there, and he gave Travis a gospel tract, and they just started talking. Well, come to find out, Travis said, well, my New Year's resolution was to find a good church and be a part of it. And so we told him about our plans. We were starting a church and so forth. So I started discipleship with him, the same thing we're doing in Sunday school, the ABCs of Christian Growth. And we actually met at the Peppy Grill every Thursday night until we got this place. And then we went over, one letter per week, and we dealt with the basics of Christian growth. Then it was at that same time, every Thursday night we were coming out here, preaching on the corners, knocking on doors and stuff. We were telling people, hey, we're going to start a church in the area. And I'm just, in my heart, I'm conflict. I'm like, Lord, where are we sending these people? We're like going and giving them the gospel, telling them we're going to start a church. Where is it going to be? Where are we going to, I mean, if somebody's interested, somebody gets saved, what are we going to do? Just continue to build a crowd over there at Peppy Grill, And so I was like, we need an answer on this. Well, the next Sunday, that Thursday night that I was thinking that, I said, you know what, guys, you guys all go out and do the evangelism. I need to spend some time with the Lord and thinking and so forth. So I walked the streets just praying and asking God to give us direction, help us to know where we should meet, give us a place that we can meet in. And the following Sunday, there was a man who was attending McGregor Road at the time. His name was Matt Bias. He came to me. He said, brother, I hear you're starting a church in Fountain Square, And I said, yep, that's correct. He said, have you found a place to meet yet? I said, no. He said, you know what, my cousin or uncle, he said, it's like a distant relative, not sure if it's cousin or uncle, but he owns the theater building, and his name is Linton Calvert. He said, why don't I set up a lunch meeting with him, and we'll go talk to him and see if he's got some space for you. I said, that would be great. So we go, and we met with him, and he said, you know what, man, I don't have any space. He said, but I do have, and this is ironic because he was out there hollering at us, telling us not to preach in front of his building. But then he said, but you know what, you do have, I have 5 people that I want you to get your pen and paper out and write down these names and phone numbers and call them and tell them that I told you to call, and tell them that I said that they need to give you a deal on a space that they have so that you can meet in for church. So I started calling. The first one I called, if I remember correctly, was Eric Coring with Coring & Sons Heating and Cooling, or K&S Holdings, and he didn't answer. I left a message. Then I called a number of a lady that had a space right out here on Virginia, and she didn't answer. So I left a message. Then Eric called me back, and I told him my vision, told him my heart, told him what I was planning on doing, and he said, well, and I actually asked him about the space on the end of this building, down there, the little, it's like, it points out down there, it says office over the door, but I asked him about that place, and he said, well, we just leased it. He said, but I have about a 1,300 square foot space. It needs work done on it, but I think it would fit your needs. Here's where it is. It's at the corner of Shelby and Woodlawn. He said, we can rent that to you. He said, what would that be worth to you per month, do you think? And I said, man, what it's worth and what we can afford are probably 2 totally different things. I said, I was just kind of like throwing something out there and hoping that something would stick and work out for us. And he said, well, what do you have? And I said, well, we've got a budget of $200 a month right now. He said, well, how's 150 sound? So we rented this place, 1,300 square feet, for $150 a month for the first year. Well, we had to come in here and do a lot of work. This place was nasty. It needed, all the walls needed like ground, like the paint and the everything, whatever it was that was on the walls, all that stuff, it all had to be ground off. We had hundreds of hours in this here, but we did probably about $15,000 worth of renovations and furnishings for about $2,200. The Lord really worked it out. We had a lot of volunteers from McGregor Road. We had people come and help for this and that. Good News Mission gave us a lot of things. They gave us our fixtures, bathroom fixtures, our kitchenette fixtures, all the office furniture and so forth. Bible Study Chapel gave us the pulpit. McGregor Road, of course, donated the $2,000 to get us. Basically, that was their budget. They said, we'll give you $2,000 to get the building up and in order. The piano came, well, this piano came from Good News, but the piano that we originally had, actually Piano Solutions up in Carmel, donated the piano. They just charged for us for them to deliver it and tune it. But they donated the piano at no cost. And so we did all the renovations and everything for $2,000. The piano cost us $200. So, well, $220. So it was about $1,980. So it was basically $2,200. We did everything. These pews here, we actually got, I found them on Craigslist, and there was another church, they were giving them away. It took about 3 or 4 weeks. I sent them an email, like 2 or 3 times. I called the number, left a message, nothing. And so I just gave up. I was like, well, the Lord will provide pews eventually. But if we would have called back then, we would have no place for them, because we were doing all kinds of work in here, and we needed the space open. We moved walls and everything. But and we have a video on YouTube actually that's kind of like the startup and shows where we came from or like what the building looked like and what we did with it. But we got it all together, and as we were getting everything together, everything started just falling into place in the right time. The guy called me and he said, hey, I'm calling about these pews we have here. Are you still interested? I said, yes, I am. So we went and we got them. These pews are about 100 years old. They are solid oak pews, and we got them, and and by the way, if you ever try to lift them, you'll know that they're solid, heavy pews. And we Good News Mission loaned us their box truck and a driver and helpers, and so we went that afternoon to that building there where they were moving their buildings and so forth, and we picked up all these pews and put them in the back of that box truck and drove it over here, and they unloaded them all and everything. So then we actually, one of the last things we did after we did a lot of the other work, in fact, after we did the tile work, before we put in the carpet, because this is all concrete floors, and we put everything in here, carpet, tile, everything. When we got the tile in before we did the carpet, we actually sanded these pews down like as much as possible. You can see if you look real close that we didn't do a professional job, but we did the best we could for volunteer work anyways. And so we sanded them down, and then we restained them and put a seal coat or shellac on them. If we had a whole bunch more time, we probably could have done a whole lot better, but we were all of us were working for the most part. I was working full-time at the mission. We had volunteers from McGregor Road. They were all working full-time. There were nights we were here until 3 in the morning, just a lot of, and then I would get up in the morning and go counsel the men at the mission throughout the day. So we got the building together. We leased this place May 1st, effective May 1st of 2011. So get the timeline. March 11th, or March 13th, I'm sorry, ordination. March 17th, our first day out here preaching, our first member is met that day. Then April, we secure the building somewhat. We got the lease, but we were reviewing it, correcting it, changing things, negotiating and stuff, and then officially on May 1st, we put the deposit in and the first month's rent, and we rented the place. And then from that point, we worked on it until August 7th, and our first service here in this building was August 7th. Now, our first service that was like an official service. It wasn't, technically it was a mission service because we were still a ministry of McGregor Road. We called it church services, but we recognized that we weren't yet a church. We were going to be. We were just a part of McGregor Road, so we were kind of like McGregor Road satellite, so to speak. So but the night before that, on August 6th, we had a dedication service, and the whole place was completely like packed full, which isn't hard to do. It's really only holds about 40 people or so, and there were at least that many here, and everybody was packed in, and we had a service. We sang some songs, and we dedicated the building here for the use of the ministry for the Lord, and then the next day we had our first service, and the Lord blessed, and we began to grow, and January 1st of 2012, we had a Autonomy service, which was a joint service with McGregor Road on the Sunday evening service, and they declared us they released us, so to speak, and declared us a autonomous work. And then we came back here the following Wednesday, and we set up our declaration of trust for the relationship there to handle the finances and the property and so forth. And then we actually signed our covenant though on January 1st at McGregor Road. They had it up on the Lord's table up front in their church building, and he preached, and then I preached, and then we had some prayer and dedication, and then the members of our church that were there, or the ones that were going to be the founding members, all except for my mom because she was in the hospital with someone. We all went forward and we signed the covenant, and then I took the covenant to the hospital. My mom signed it, and so we all covenanted together, and that actually is the original covenant out there on the wall. And so we were here until June. Then we went on a furlough. My family did. We left the church for a little while. Brother John C. DeCryder, we call him John Senior, but he's like John the 7th or 8th or something like that. But that's why they call him John C, because of his middle name. I don't know what his middle name is, but it starts with a C. Anyhow, he came in and he was the interim pastor here. And he was here for about a little over 2 years, from June 20th until the end of June 20th, 2012 to the end of July of last year, 2014. So, and then the church had called us to come back. While he was here, he won Brother Jim Bornstein to the Lord and began his discipleship. And in fact, Brother Jim went with him faithfully every Saturday morning, door knocking around here. Every single Saturday morning they went together. Of course, they might have missed one for weather or whatever, but every time John was out, Jim was out for the most part. So, and Jim in his 80s out door knocking and inviting people to church. So that was encouraging to hear. And so around the time, around July of 2014, the Lord had led the church in the direction of calling us back here. And Brother John came to me at a men's retreat and said, "Brother, we've been praying about it. We believe the Lord would have you to come and present the possibility of you coming back. Would you come and give your testimony and tell them what your vision is and see if it might be a fit for you to come back?" And so we came Wednesday. That was in June. He said that we came Wednesday. I think it was July 9th. I think it was. But we came and I gave my testimony and kind of gave them a little bit of history. Of course, there were only 3 here at the time, and only one of them didn't know me, because Travis and Linda both, I led Linda to the Lord, well, indirectly. I kind of led her along the way, and she got saved at home. But Travis, I personally discipled when he was part of building the building, so he didn't really need the history. But we gave him all the info, and everybody was like, "Cool." He said, "All right, we'll get back with you." The next week he called me. He said, "Hey, they voted unanimously, all 3 of them, for you to come back." And then, so what we're looking at is August, the first Sunday in August, for you to come back. So we came back first Sunday in August, and since we've been back, the Lord's been blessing. We've been seeing people get saved, and we've done a little over half a dozen baptisms, and we've grown from 3 to 15 now, and we run about 20 to 25 on a Sunday morning, as far as people being here, depending on weather and sicknesses and so forth. But that's a little bit of the history. Actually, it's kind of like most of the history without going into all the details of this church and where it has been, or where it came from and how we got here. It's what just turned 3 years old, just a few months, or just last month. So looking forward to seeing what the Lord is going to do. Our vision for the future is to see many other churches planted, not to leave here, but to, from here, start other churches and send other people out. And we just pray that the Lord would do that in a great way. Amen.
Some records out, which I thought you all might be interested in looking at. We don't go way back, as we've been to some churches, reached back into the 1800s, 1600s, things of that sort in root. But we do through other churches. But our church here, you can see that second paragraph on the paper shows that I-74 Baptist Church was constituted on January 28, 1971. And the church was actually started from Burge Terrace Baptist Church, and it was started under the leadership of Dwayne Felber, the pastor, but they called it I-74 Baptist Fellowship. And it would have been called that until it was constituted as a church. And so in the 70s, actually in November of 69, is when they would have sent out a group, and then that group would have met for a little over a year. And just at their year mark in December of 1970 is when they actually would have called their first pastor, Don Martin. And then it was just after that, then in that January, that Birch Terrace felt necessary to go ahead and constitute them as a local church on their own. And of course, that's when they dropped the name Fellow, or the tag fellowship, and would have adopted the name I-74 Baptist Church. And so that, of course, that date, January 20th, 1971, it was done on a Thursday. And I don't have records from exactly what took place at that service, but I imagine it was a Thursday because I'm sure Birch Terrace Baptist Church wanted to be a part of that. And by that point, they would have had a storefront. And I don't know if you're real familiar with Acton, some of you definitely are, but that main strip in Acton, there's a store there. But beside that store is a little, like an eBay store. Now a guy just buys and sells stuff. I understand that that's the building that they met in at the first. And then I actually have records. I don't have them out here, but I do have records of when they bought their first property. It was actually off of a Methodist church. It's a Methodist church building in town. The building is still there. And they met in that until a tornado actually came through and lifted the roof off the building and set it back down crooked. And so from that point, the state would no longer allow public occupancy. And they had already acquired this land. And so if you look at the bottom there, you kind of see a little bit of that history at the very bottom of your page, noting that it met there in a storefront in Acton. And then on May 29th, 1971 is when they would have bought the property there from the Methodist Church. And that's there on Virgil Street. And Aaron could probably swing you by there and show you that if it's still there, and it looks pretty much like that. Actually, I think it's in one of the, I might get a book in the back. I actually have a picture, I have it on my phone too, of what that building looked like when they were meeting. And a lot of the kite stuff that's there now, that was all just a vacant parking lot. And so they had, it was kind of interesting to see the area, but I did a picture of that as well. And then we find that in 77 is when they would have bought this property. And actually, this property is two pieces of property bought off of a farmer named Mutz. And we have those records as well. But they bought a considerable portion, I think 7 acres, and then kind of find out they couldn't get a driveway permit on this side because of the bridge and the intersection and all that. So they ended up buying another strip of property, which ended up being the major entrance, and then parsonage and everything ended up being built on that. And so where you pulled in the drive and all that strip all the way back to the back property, it's 900-foot long strip there that was bought later, 2 acres to add on. But the main purpose of that was so that they could get approval to put a driveway in, and so there's just shy of 10 acres. And so their first thing they did was they built the parsonage, and then it was after that was built that storm happened and kind of dislodged the roof, and that moved them to go ahead and build this structure here as well. I believe this is about 30 years old. I don't actually have all the dates on that put together yet. Still working on all that. But we find it says in the early 1980s that I-74 Baptist Church was renamed to Fellowship Baptist. And if you look at a lot of paperwork, a lot of that Fellowship Baptist side's kind of skipped over, and it kind of goes from I-74 right to McGregor Road Baptist. And it's because it was really a short time that it was called that. I don't really know why. I still want to dig into that. A lot of times churches, their names change because maybe a reputation issue in the community or something happened, or even a move or something like that. We're just trying to get kind of a little fresh beginning for whatever reason. But nonetheless, it was definitely in the early 80s. I have records in 85 that show that the name had already switched to Fellowship Baptist. And then in the early 80s, I think 80, 81, it was still I-74. So somewhere in 82 to 85 range, it changed to Fellowship Baptist. And then January 24th, 1990 is when Fellowship Baptist was renamed to McGregor Road Baptist Church. And of course, that's probably all coinciding with the move location. So the idea of Burge Terrace, they really wanted this church plant to really feed that corridor there of I-74. From what I understand, and some of the people that started this work are in my family actually. My wife's mother was a part, my wife's grandmother and a grandfather, the Amos and Ruth Moore. They were here present at the institution of the church. And so we kind of get a little of those details brought in, so that's kind of neat to hear those sides. But they tried to obtain property down by I-74 for a while, I guess, and it just never worked out. And then this property, I guess, has a real interesting story behind it too. The farmer really didn't want to sell. It was really the farmer's wife didn't want to sell to the church. And just through a series of things, Mr. Mutt's dying, and different things happening, and ended up that it was procured by them. But anyway, so we like the location where it's at now, and it's definitely on a well-traveled area in sorts. So, and as far as the history goes, there's so much that could be discussed. If you notice the long list of pastors there, it says Pastoral History of MRBC. I didn't really write down the time frame, because you can do the math. You'll find that it went through a lot of pastors very quickly. And I note in that paragraph, you can read there above that pastoral history, that guy, Ken St. Laurent, he was one of the founding members of the church. Matter of fact, he was sent out, he and his family was sent out from Burge Terrace Baptist Church, and he would have been the guy that would have preached and really organized that fellowship, looking for that day to constitute as a local church. And I've talked to him, I've talked to others about all this, and it seems as if he was a Bible college student, aspiring to pastor, and for whatever reason, I don't know the reason, for whatever reason, they chose not to call him as their pastor, and they chose to call this guy named Donald Martin. And he would have come from a church down in Bloomington, so I don't know the connection there on how all that stuff works out, but I do know that Ken St. Laurent would have stayed, and every time that the church was without a pastor, then he would fill that role as an interim pastor. And that lasted all the way till about 15 years ago. And it was in 2000, the summer of 2000, that he and many others would have left. And the church was really down to about 13 people, 13 members. And that was when I was called as the pastor of this church. And so that's been shy of 15 years ago. And so if you look on through that history, though, you'll find him, and then you find, of course, Ken St. Laurent acting as pastor again. And then in 73, this guy named Myron Young came. And just talking to the members that have been here, Myron Young was a guy that was well liked. He is still alive today. He's had a lot of health issues, but he's a pastor down in Linton, Indiana today. I've actually gone to the hospital to visit him a few times since he's been up here. But he made a huge impact on a lot of the families. He was just very down to earth. And you notice he stayed for a decent amount of time in reference to all the others. And so they really liked him. But he came from Morgantown Baptist Church. And I haven't done any research on that particular church, but you'll see a couple there coming from there. They must have had some kind of a close relationship with them, because the next pastor as well would have come from there, Bill Reed. But Bill Reed only lasted 4 months, and so he was only here for just a real short time. Again, not really sure all that happened with that. I know that the standing order of those that became not what we know as now the McGregor Road Baptist Church, I do know that it was really kind of a combative environment, and anytime that a pastor would try to do something that maybe the core wasn't really for, the core really did get together, and it became us against them, and I got to witness that. So I actually came in, I got saved in this church, but when Phil Stringer was here, down in you look at 88 to 91, when he was here, I came in right at the very last of that. Yeah, Phil Stringer's now pastoring up in Chicago at Ravenswood Baptist Church, and he did some time down in Florida as the president of a school down there for a Landmark under Pastor Mickey Carter. But anyway, he was here, and I met my now wife in the November of 90, and so we had by March I had proposed to her. We were going to be married, and so Phil Stringer was going to do our wedding, and he left just before 2 weeks before our wedding actually, and so we ended up going over to Birch Terrace. Pastor Felber actually came and performed our wedding. But nonetheless, what was going on that day, that the church was growing, it was thriving. They were running, I think, around 120, 130 members at that point. And I remember those days. It was pretty tremendous. And just coming in as a lost man and getting saved. But that once that church split, there was a lot of things going on that day. The youth guy, he ran off with one of the family members' teenage daughters. And so there was just all kinds of turmoil happening. And then when Phil Stringer left, like half the church went with them, and he tried to start a work. I think they tried to meet in Acton, that didn't work. I think they were up in Wanamaker for a little while. He and the youth guy that ran off with Mr. White's daughter. And anyway, all that was going on, and the church from that point really, quite honestly, got decimated. And I was just really, really young. Matter of fact, to be honest with you, my profession then was false. I didn't really get saved until 2 years into it when Ken Hogan was here. But even in that state, here I was just coming in, and 23-year-old, and I grew up Catholic. I had a false profession, and I was instantly thrust into roles of leadership. I was on the search committee, things like that, even in that day with Ken Hogan, and then very intimately there with Terry Danford coming in. Ken Hogan would have lasted just a couple of years, and he I'm not sure how we got in contact with him, but he came from a work that they were starting in Greenwood, and actually an ordinance in Greenwood was not allowing them to meet in a house, because in Greenwood your churches can't meet in homes. If they find out that they have an ordinance on Sunday, you're just not allowed to meet as a church in a private residence. And so that was working against them at that time, and that's when somehow they got connected here, and he ended up becoming our pastor. He only lasted a couple of years as well. He was an interesting guy. He's still pastoring. He's down in Springfield, Missouri, and his wife got sick and ended up passing away just soon after he left here. But he did one very important thing for our church. He put in our bylaws that we would only use the King James Version Bible. And prior to that point, I'll be honest with you, this church really wasn't headed down the course that it is now. It had a lot of things brewing within it. There was one point that I had resigned all my offices. I was going to leave the church over just weak stances doctrinally. By the time Terry Danford was leaving, I had already spent a lot of time in the Word and working with the youth and gone to Heritage Baptist University, and kind of already being solidified in my own self. And so I got to the place that I couldn't really be a part of what was going on. And it was then that everything kind of blew up, and everybody that I thought was the problem left. And just left a few of us to continue on. But nonetheless, in the midst of all that, just to note that Phil Stringer, he did set some things in order as well. And as there's some interesting things about Phil Stringer as a person. You could do a whole life study on that guy. But he did bring about some things that, quite honestly, was turning the tide of the church more towards an independent, in that day, fundamental stance. And then Ken Hogan, of course, adding the King James side to it. And then Terry Danford coming in, and he was young. This would be his first pastorate. And he might have, relationally, I can't really speak a whole lot there, but I know scripturally, doctrinally, he really set some things in order as well, and got some things down, and just getting people really to have that desire to serve the Lord, those that were going to serve the Lord. And so he kind of set some things in place. So by the time I came along, to be honest with you, it was a clean slate. It was a clean slate. Just a few of us left. Half of that was my family. And so we were able to build upon those things that were laid to where we're at today. And we were definitely independent. Don't really care for the fundamental tag just because of the Protestant connection with it. We got hooked up with, I guess, Ted Alexander and some others that became very influential on us, just learning Baptist history, which was really good for me, because it kind of showed that, we're not just here all by ourselves. There's those that have gone before us, and when you start to learn that, what was kind of fraught to get to this place, it just does something for you, and it solidifies some things, and so we've been pretty excited to be able to grow. And I don't know, we're running now, we run 70, 80s now. We've seen 3 or 4 families come in here recently, and just have a lot of things going on. And but the music is definitely sacred, and our Bible's King James. We're unapologetic in our stance. We can preach the gospel, reach out. I mean, it's just, I believe, as it should be. And so I believe the Lord's really preserved a work. If you look back at the roots a little bit, you're going to find some Bob Jones in there. You're going to find some interesting things in there. We wholly reject Bob Jones and their mentality, their philosophy. It's wrong. It's not Baptist, and I don't believe it's biblical. But nonetheless, praise the Lord. Even from that, you can see something come out that's solid. And so anyway, I'm pretty excited about where we're at and where we're headed. But who knows what the environment will afford. Amen. And so that's just a few things, kind of where we came from. We were moved to start Fountain Square Baptist Church a while back. Brother Aaron been here for quite a while, and feeling the call to pastor. And so he was ordained in our church, and then we started just preaching down there in Fountain Square. Came across Travis on the street, and he got excited and found a building where you guys meet today, and got to renovate that. and just see all that come together. And like I said, some interesting things have happened down there. You can't always, I guess, plan for everything that's going to happen. But at the end of the day, you just have to roll with it and trust the Spirit of God and pray and to see what He'll do. And I believe God's doing a work there, and I think He'll continue to do so. So it's exciting to see what's coming about. Amen. A lot of churches never get the opportunity to birth a church, and it's just tremendous. It's a great thing. I know you guys are definitely interested at some point in doing that. And so just like a family who has no male children, their name kind of dies, right? It doesn't go on. But we're told to reproduce ourselves, right? And so that's what we're interested in doing. We want to do that over and over again. And we're trying to reach out now in the Shelbyville area just preliminarily, just to see what God will do there. And Lord willing, we'd love to start another work down there. So we'll just see where that goes from here. I'm excited about the work Brother Aaron's doing, because it's not just the history of Fountain Square Baptist Church, but it's also the history of McGregor Road Baptist Church. And so we're very, very excited about that, and I look forward to seeing all that put together. So, any questions, thoughts on where we're at?
On your left here, this building here used to be a pool hall, and it is the original meeting place for McGregor Road Baptist Church, which was I-74 Baptist Church. That building right there on our left. This is where they first started having their services, when they were having a fellowship here. And then they moved down the road, which would be at our next stop. And just for FYI, this is where my oldest son, Aaron, was born. This building here on your left is the first building that I-74 Baptist Church, which is now McGregor Road Baptist Church, owned. As we drive by, you'll see here the reason that they moved, as Pastor Kaiser had said, is because there was a tornado. It lifted the roof, and when it put it back down, it put it down crooked. When I was a teenager, a tornado came through the town, or at least a really high wind thunderstorm with tornadic winds, and my friends and I actually took shelter in this building as well. So a lot of interesting history there. This is where it is now. It's owned by a private owner now, in the Kite family, who also owns this big building over here. And they also they manage the cemetery over here where my father is buried. This building here, covered in snow, is the current meeting place of Burge Terrace Baptist Church. Now, Burge Terrace Baptist Church here is here on Brookville Road, and a little bit more history here to come. All right, Burge Terrace Baptist Church. The starting of Burge Terrace Baptist Church, well, first off, McGregor Road Baptist Church was started by 10 families that were sent out of here from Burge Terrace. And as Brother Kaiser had already said when we were there, Brother Ken St. Laurent was the church planter, and they went out around 1969. And Burge Terrace Baptist Church here, the background was there was a man named Dick Gillespie, and I'm giving you, by the way, like 3 or 4 or 5, actually 6 different interviews that I've done. I just kind of put them all together into one story. So Dick Gillespie was a Congregationalist pastor who was preaching in a Congregationalist church, and he got saved and began preaching the truth. Well, that didn't go very well for very long. They actually dismissed him as their pastor, asked him to leave. 3 couples left with him, and then they went and attended a revival meeting at the Indianapolis Baptist Temple, where Dick Gillespie's parents were members. At the Indianapolis Baptist Temple, while they were at that revival, he had decided that he was going to go start a church. Well, Dr. Dixon said to his parents that's, go ahead and go. So his parents went with him along with those other 3 couples, and another 3 families found out that they were that they were doing that. They lived in this area out here on the east side of Indianapolis, or actually at that time it was east of Indianapolis. It wasn't part of the city at the time, but they came with him, and those three families came from the First Baptist Church of Beech Grove. And so in 1956 they came and they began meeting in a chicken coop in the field out in this area. Well, later the property was donated with the condition that they would be called Burge Terrace, which had to do with the area here. Well, Dick Gillespie had not yet been scripturally baptized, and he was leading people to the Lord and baptizing them, and then realized that he himself needed to be scripturally baptized. Also realized that he didn't know much in the way of doctrine. Biblically, he just knew, what he had already had there, so he had to look at it from a whole different perspective. Well, he ended up going and leaving and going to Bible college and getting scripturally baptized, and he pastored another work later. But he left in '56, just a few months after. It was 6 months to a year after they'd started here, so it was 56 or 57, 1956 or 1957. And then another man, who I'll give a little bit of background of first, and then talk about how he came here. A man named Dwayne Felber was saved in a neighborhood Bible study. It was a Youth for Christ neighborhood Bible study in Burge, Indiana. And when he got old enough to go to college, he wanted to go to a Bible college. He wanted to be in the ministry. And so, and he felt the call of God on his life, so he was looking for a good Bible college to go to. Well, he was going to a Reformed church at the time, a Reformed, a German Reformed, I believe, is what I remember. He was going to that kind of a church. He didn't want to go to that kind of school, so he and his friends went driving around the country looking for a good school to go to. They ended up landing on Bob Jones University at the time, which was a pretty big name university for the fundamentalists at the time in the 50s. And in 1950, he began at Bob Jones University. In fact, for anybody that may know any other people, Pastor Raymond Ford also was there during that time, he and his wife Virginia. But they came out of there. Raymond Ford came back here, was a part of some other works and so forth with Ford Porter and some other things, and actually on the board when they started Indianapolis or Indiana Baptist Indiana Baptist College. And so anyhow, Dwayne Felber graduated. Well, not before he graduated. He was at Bob Jones, and one of his teachers challenged him on the doctrine of baptism. Well, at this point he had not been scripturally baptized, and he studied in the Greek and the Bible and so forth, and he was convinced that he needed to be scripturally baptized by immersion after salvation. So he was already saved, and he determined then that he needed to find a good scriptural Baptist church to be baptized in. Well, he found Spring Hill Baptist Church, which was near Greenville, South Carolina, and Pastor Woodrow Finger baptized him, and then he attended there from 1953 to 1954, and in 1954 he graduated from Bible college, and he was called to the pastorate in Reno Baptist Church in Georgia, and in Reno, Georgia. And before he answered that call, there was a church in Bainbridge, Georgia. It was Calvary Baptist Church in Bainbridge, Georgia. They actually ordained him and sent him to pastor the Reno Baptist Church in Reno, Georgia. He was there for a little over a year, and then he went to the next Baptist church he went to is Northside Baptist Church in Columbus, Georgia. Just trying to remember all my facts correctly. And he was there until 1959. In the summer of 1959, he came back to Burge, Indiana, for a vacation to spend some time with his family. And during that time, the fellowship here at Burge Terrace was still kind of struggling. They needed a pastor. They hadn't yet constituted fully as a New Testament Baptist church, and so he was asked to come here and preach. So he came and preached, and they liked him, and they wanted him to be their pastor. So he went back to Georgia, to the church he was pastoring. He let them know about it, and he resigned his position there as pastor. And then in August of 1959, he came here, and he pastored this work and actually constituted the church. So we're looking at three different paths. As we leave here, we'll go to, we're actually going to follow the local things. What I was going to do is we're following our history back. And if you're looking at the authority for this church, well, the authority for this church, I believe, scripturally would have gone through Pastor Felber and his ordination down in Georgia. Now, we're obviously not going to go to Bainbridge, Georgia today, but I have a call in with a Georgian Baptist historian who is running down that information so that we can get some of that information as far as going back further on the authority side. Now, as far as churches that were a part of this church plan, we're going to follow that, because in that we can hit a few places here in Indianapolis that were a part of the history here in Indianapolis and the part of the Baptists in Indianapolis. So our next stop we're going to go to is going to be the Baptist Temple, and then after that we'll go to First Baptist of Beech Grove, where we'll deal with how each of those families came and so forth. At Baptist Temple we'll be able to go inside, Lord willing, and then at the First Baptist of Beech Grove we'll just see if anybody's there. So any questions?
We are Baptist Temple. Remember, the reason that there's a connection here is because the parents of Gillespie came out of this church. They were members of this church. We're going to go to their original site. I'll say a little bit more about it then. But basically, you'll have the video also of their history wall there.
This is the site where the Indianapolis Baptist Temple had their first building. They were started by a man named George Young, who came out of Temple Baptist Church of Detroit, Michigan, and he started the church in 1950, and in 1955 Pastor Greg Dixon Sr., or Greg J. Dixon, became the pastor of the church. In the 90s, Pastor Greg Allen Dixon became the pastor. In the around the year 2000, actually the battle had started earlier on, but around the year 2000 it began to come to a head on a battle with the government concerning religious liberty and the separation of church and state concerning taxes. Well, the battle came to an end on February 13th, 2001, and the federal marshals came in and seized the property, and this building has been sold to what looks like to be a charter school, and they've totally remodeled the building. It doesn't look much like it used to look, and I think that they may have kept some of the original building, but made a lot of changes. Their property stretched on pretty much almost all the way down to Troy Avenue here, and they were, if you look at the previous video about their church and the history of their church, they were the largest church in the city of Indianapolis back in the day, and they were a very active church, and they were also a very targeted church, and so it's no question why they ended up in an issue there where God is doing a work, the devil is also trying to fight, and so this is evidence of that. Now the church was not taken from them. Their property was, but the church was still in existence. They continued services. In fact, didn't even miss a service. They continued their services at Emanuel High School, and then they got their current building out on Southport Road after that. Okay, everybody, right here, this building is the first building. It's currently a full gospel church that meets here, but it wasn't originally. In fact, I'm not sure that this was actually the original. I'm not sure that the Baptists built this building, but this was the First Baptist Church of Beech Grove. This is where they met. On the history of First Baptist of Beech Grove, they were a church plant that came out of Emanuel Baptist Church in Indianapolis, and Emanuel Baptist Church sent them out. It was a mission here. It was Beech Grove First Baptist, or it was Beech Grove Baptist Mission, and it was in 1912 that they established the First Baptist Church of Beech Grove right here. This is the current site of the First Baptist Church of Beech Grove. There's their sign, and as I said already, First Baptist Church of Beech Grove was established in 1912 by Emanuel Baptist Church, and they had 3 of their families went out to members of Burge Terrace Baptist Church. Now, just to recap, Fountain Square Baptist Church was started by McGregor Road Baptist Church, and McGregor Road Baptist Church was started by Burge Terrace Baptist Church. A lot of things going on around us. Then Burge Terrace Baptist Church, the majority of the founding members of Burge Terrace Baptist Church came out of First Baptist of Beech Grove. The Authority Baptist Church came out of a church named Calvary Baptist down in Bainbridge, Georgia. And but here we are. We followed First Baptist Church of Beech Grove. First Baptist Church of Beech Grove was started by Emanuel Baptist Church. Here behind me, and I'm going to let this vehicle pass, but here behind me is their first and only building that they had. They actually, Emanuel Baptist Church, they started First Baptist of Beech Grove in 1912. And Emanuel Baptist Church actually came out of South Street Baptist Church, the history of that actually is really interesting. They were, in fact, I read in an Indianapolis history book that they were a swarm of members from the South Street Baptist Church, which we'll go to next. And they called it a swarm of members because they hadn't they basically split off of the church, but they didn't like officially split. They just left and started having services somewhere else while the church was going through a little bit of trouble. But a few years later, this was in 1899, they left, and they actually met over on Virginia Avenue, back just a little bit north of Woodlawn, and they were in a storefront. They were only there for a few months, and then they had some backing. The South Street Baptist Church began to recognize that this swarm was beginning a new work, and the Central Baptist Association of Indiana, they recognized as well that they were starting a work. Well, they were able to get this building, which used to be a store, and they actually built around the store and created the current building. And with the help of the Central Baptist Association of Indiana and their sending church, South Street Baptist, and I said that now, sending church, but they actually recognized after the fact that they were a church plant from South Street Baptist, even though they weren't originally sent out for that purpose. But in 1905, they actually established their church here, Emanuel Baptist Church, in 1905, and all of the Central Baptist Association met here for their annual meeting, and they all were a part of this church being started. They all put their blessing on this church being started. And South Street Baptist Church, of course, then at that point put their blessing on it and their authority. And so this church was started at that time. About 3 years ago, well, in 2011 and a little before, they were going through some trouble, and the reason they went through some trouble is because this church had gone through, their lifetime. They had gone through various pastors and so forth. Well, they had lost a pastor, and about 10 years before that point, so in the early 90s, they got a new pastor, but they were doctrinally confused, and their new pastor was a Christian church pastor. He did not hold to the Baptist distinctives and did not understand the true Baptist doctrines, and at the time he also brought in, now he maintained the name Emanuel Baptist Church, and he brought in a humanitarian work. He started humanitarian ministry, trying to reach ladies from or women from the women's prison, and they would stay in this building in the back side there upstairs, and he would give them a place to stay, a second chance. And I'm not saying that to say that it's a bad thing. It was certainly a good thing to try to do a humanitarian work. The problem is that after he passed away, all of the Christian church folk who had come and been a part of it, they now looked at the humanitarian work as more important than maintaining a Baptist church here. And so after he passed away, they struggled for a good while to find a new pastor. And in fact, they hadn't found one as of the time that I met them in 2011. And they actually got into a major legal battle between the original members. And when I say original members, I mean the Baptist members that were here at the time. There weren't at that point, obviously, members from 1905, but they were in a legal battle with the Christian church folk that had come in, who had never actually scripturally become members of the church. And because they were outnumbered by the Christian folk, the Christian church group, whatever, they actually, in court, the verdict was hand the keys over to the humanitarian group. And so Emanuel Baptist Church, the actual church, lost their building at that point. They pretty much disappeared at that point. The people are still around. They're going to different Baptist churches now. But as you can see, they scratched the word Baptist off of the sign and changed their sign here. If you call the number on the sign, you'll find that that number is not in service. If you drive by here during the service times at night, you'll notice that there's no lights on. And so the church that had taken over, they had services for some time, but they had no strong group, and they really weren't able to continue very well. So they still have possession of the property. A man named George Taylor, the elder of the Baptist group, still has in his possession, he lives actually down the road here, he has in his possession the title, the deeds to the property still. But they're currently obviously not using the property for the purpose that it was set out to be used. But the piece of history here is very interesting because I didn't know, tracing the roots back before we started the church down the street, I didn't know that this church was a part of our history. And so it's very interesting to see this. And so we're going to head on over to South Street Baptist, or where South Street Baptist Church was, and take a look at the history there. All right, here we are at the corner of Fletcher and College. These streets actually used to have different names. Fletcher was South Street, and it still is. If you go west here, it'll turn into South Street. And College Avenue used to be, or at least right here, used to be Noble Street. This is where South Street Baptist Church sat, and actually their original building was actually on the corner where this parking lot is here, if you want to get a shot of the parking lot. Their original building was on this corner, and as you can see, the downtown area in the background, they were right in the middle of the, well, they were actually, the city limits used to be just west of here, at the corner of where Virginia East and South come together. That was the southeast corner of the city. The city was all within the four streets there, northeast, south, and west street. That was the mile square city. In fact, the man that wrote the plat, drew the plat for the city, designed the plat, he said that we would never need more than 1 mile square for our city here in Indianapolis, and now here we are, much larger than that. But this church was the second Baptist church in this area. In the city of Indianapolis, well, we're going to talk about the First Baptist Church at our next stop, but the First Baptist Church of Indianapolis started this church. It was South Street Baptist Church. They began, this church started in 1856. And I say this church, the church that met here. This building now is it is Fletcher Place Lofts. It's owned by a realty company. It's used to house people now. The South Street Baptist Church, I'm still working on some research on it. I don't know what happened with the South Street Baptist Church, but they did in 1899. They had a group of their members split out, and they went over to the Fountain Square area, and they became Emanuel Baptist Church in Fountain Square. So South Street Baptist Church sat here. It was the second Baptist church in Indianapolis here, and it was outside of Indianapolis, but here's where it was. The next stop's going to be the First Baptist Church of Indianapolis, and we'll head on over there now. All right, behind me here is the corner of Meridian and Maryland. This is the original site of the First Baptist Church of the city of Indianapolis. In the year 1821, the plat was drawn for the city of Indianapolis, and the decision was made to move the state capital from Corydon here to Indianapolis. And at that time, everybody began scrambling to become new citizens of this little city, the capital of the state. And the first settlers here were the McCormick family. The McCormick family was, John and Samuel McCormick were the first white people to live here in the city of Indianapolis. And when they came here, they came bringing also their religion, of course, and they as Baptists, with many others, wanted to come and to establish a church in this area to be able to reach the people that were going to come to the city of Indianapolis. Well, these men and many others from various other areas of the state came to this area, and they knew that they needed authority to establish a church here. So they called on a man named William Tenure, who was the pastor of the Little Cedar Grove Baptist Church in Brookville, Indiana, just on the southeast end of the state. He established that church in 1805, and they built the first church building in the state was actually built there in 1812, and actually it was the first church building in the Mississippi Valley. Well, he came here and moderated and officiated the establishment of the First Baptist Church of Indianapolis, which was on this site. In 1856, when they started South Street Baptist Church, where we just came from, right after they built that building, the pastor of this church was preaching, and he preached a sermon which included the necessity of emancipation. And because he said that emancipation was a good thing, that emancipation was the freedom of the slaves, someone burned their building down. And so they moved. In fact, right after they started a new church, they had to move their church to another location, which we're headed to next, which is going to be at the corner of Pennsylvania and New York streets. Here we are at the corner, well, close to the corner of New York Street and Pennsylvania Avenue and Pennsylvania Street. And right here on this corner was the second site of the First Baptist Church of Indianapolis. And right here we had, they built their building after their first building had burned down. In fact, I have some pictures of their second building. Don't have pictures of their first building. I'm still looking for them. They built that building there, and that building burned down, and they moved to the corner of Meridian and Vermont, which actually you can see from here. The huge building right here behind us is the War Memorial Building, the World War Memorial Building, and at the corner there, the northeast corner of Meridian and Vermont Street is where the First Baptist Church's third building was. They had a building burned down. I'm forgetting now exactly the details as to whether they rebuilt here and then it burnt down again, or they rebuilt there. But their last building that they had here in the downtown area was there at Vermont and Meridian, and they were there until 1960. In 1960, the government came to them and said, "We would like to buy your property to build a war memorial on, and we will pay you a nice sum of money." The First Baptist Church of Indianapolis received at that time $750,000 for the corner lot there. They were given that money, and they moved to 86th and College, which is our next stop, and that is their current location where they have been since 1960. They moved there after selling their property. They bought a 38 acre, losing my voice now, bought a 38 acre area up there, nice area. At this point, a lot of things have happened in the Indianapolis city. By 1960, of course, when they started, there were no automobiles. There were none of those problems. Everybody got around by foot or horse and buggy and all of that in 1822 when they started, when they came to the city. During that time that they were here and they moved from one place to another, by the time they moved from there, they had cars and they had parking problems and they had all of these issues. So it made sense for them to move in 1960 when they did. So next we're going to go out there to their current site and look at that. Here we are at First Baptist Church of Indianapolis. This is their current site. This building was built in 1960. I'm sure there were stages, and some of this is newer than 1960, but just to recap a little bit about what we'd already said, and actually I'm going to go in the other order. First Baptist Church came here to Indianapolis, and actually they were organized in 1822, and they became the First Baptist Church of Indianapolis under the ministry of William Tyner, who came out of the little Cedar Grove Baptist Church. Actually, that was a church that he started. In fact, he came from, I didn't mention this before, but William Tyner was from, excuse me now, William Tyner was from South Carolina. He came out of a church, he was licensed to preach or ordained out of Little River Baptist Church in Abbeville, South Carolina. He fought in the Revolutionary War, actually on the British side. And he came and, well, after the war, he kind of needed to get away a little bit. So his church licensed him, and he left, came over to Ohio, actually, well, up through Kentucky, into Ohio, started one of the First Baptist churches in Ohio, and then came over and started one of the First Baptist churches in Indiana. In fact, the building there was the first building. And so, the First Baptist Church building. So then he moderated and officiated the starting of the First Baptist Church of Indianapolis in 1822. And remember, as I said, their history, just real basic history. In fact, there's a whole book written on their history called Light in the Forest that you can get probably online. It's not in print anymore, but I saw it on Amazon recently. So the real basic history for them, they started there at Maryland and Meridian. Then they moved to Pennsylvania and New York. Then they moved to Vermont and Meridian, and then in 1960 they moved here. In 1856 they started the Second Baptist Church, which was South Street Baptist Church in Indianapolis, there at the corner of South and Noble, which is now Fletcher and College. That church, out of that church came Emanuel Baptist Church in 1899, and they were established in 1905. In 1912, the First Baptist Church of Beech Grove was started out of Emanuel Baptist Church, and then 3 families of that church left to be a part of the church plant that was to later become Burge Terrace Baptist Church. Now, Burge Terrace Baptist Church, after being officiated, the other little piece was the church planter and his, the church planter's parents came out of Baptist Temple, Indianapolis Baptist Temple, in 1956. And in 1959, Burge Terrace Baptist Church was established and constituted from the authority that came from Dwayne Felber, who was ordained out of Calvary Baptist Church in Bainbridge, Georgia. In 1969, there was a group that was sent out of Burge Terrace Baptist Church to start I-74 Baptist Church. 1971, I-74 Baptist Church became, or I-74 Baptist Fellowship became I-74 Baptist Church. In the 80s, they became Fellowship Baptist Church, and then in the 1990s, early 1990s, they became McGregor Road Baptist Church. And in 2011, they sent me out to Fountain Square, and we started Fountain Square Baptist Church, established January 1st, 2012. And so that's the history of how we became who we were. To leave, if you were to follow back further the history of this church, you would be following back into South Carolina. If you were to follow the authority of Fountain Square Baptist Church, you would be following the authority back to Georgia, and I'll be getting more information about that in the future. And so this concludes our tour here, and I still have a little bit of voice left. So praise the Lord for what He's done. He's done a lot of great things here in the city of Indianapolis.